Hey guys, my name is Diana Leah, and I am your 23-year multiple sclerosis warrior and your 6-year advocate. I am advocating on the basis of course, all multiple sclerosis warriors, all autoimmune diseases, but especially P.O.MS, Pediatric Onset Multiple Sclerosis, which I have had since I was 9.5 years old. So I want to kind of go into a couple of glossary terms and identify a couple of things with you, and also teach you and explain to you how I cope, and hopefully it'll be useful to you, and you too as well can cope and utilize some of the ways that I have had used. I want to begin with a little bit of stats. When I was diagnosed, not much was known about multiple sclerosis in Black people at all. We were kind of underneath the spectrum. It was unconventional, or not even taboo. Just they didn't really associate MS with Black people at all. Black women, Black men, or Black children. So P.O.MS happens in teens and children. About 98% of them are relapse and remitting forms, and 84% of that is adults with MS. This means relapsing and remitting symptoms are going to disease that are able to progress. So when I was told that I was sick at 9 years old, they had, how can I say, softly diagnosed me with lupus, with stroke, had me diagnosed with Lyme disease. They tried to diagnose me with a couple of other cognitive and autoimmune deficient diseases. And by the time I was 12 years old, I was seen by a neurologist, and she told me, nah, you don't have any of those. You have multiple sclerosis, which led me to a path of uncertainties. And I was like, she told my parents at least, and I kind of heard, and there was no cure for this. So to get a diagnosis with no clarification, and of course no certainty, is really daunting on a child. And the complexity of MS only continued to roller coaster as I got older, and knowing that there's no cure for it only perpetuated how I felt internally, and I definitely exuded that externally. About 5% of our MS patients are children, and the ratio from female to male is, we're basically equal, but when it hits puberty, it's 3 to 1, and of course the 3 is the women. So you barely see it in males. And then on top of that, being Haitian American, you see less percentile in our color, people of color. So you try to look for, hey, let's see if I can find, because we didn't really have internet like that when I was younger. Let's see if I can find a book on MS in Black people. We didn't have this. That wasn't even. It was not a thing at all. It was not a thing to find a book of a face of a Black person on top of it talking about MS. But I'm gonna change that narrative for sure. I have a lot to say, and I want to continue on giving you guys different ways and techniques on how to not only cope and deal, but also how to grow and form a lifestyle that you can truly love and imagine and appreciate. Back in 1987, I was born then. I'm gonna age myself. It was really rare, and not only rare, but that's when they first started to see and describing that kind of form of demyelinization in black people. So 1987, they started to see the form, but of course they documented and diagnosed it with other things. I found that in all my research, the way that they dealt with people with MS literally was completely barbaric and disgusting, because they poked, probe, and they still do the same things now, but they just do it really, how can I say it? Really, it's no matter what, when you go to a doctor's appointment, that type of doctor's appointment to the way that they did it in the 1800s is so way more sophisticated, but I still find it that we are the test subjects of over 20 different types of medications. And I find that a blessing and a curse that we do have the different therapies available to us, but I don't feel like we should be test subjects. That's just how I feel. Anyway, so back in 1994, only 12 cases with African Americans were actually published for multiple sclerosis. And that's in 1994. I was diagnosed in I had pediatric onset multiple sclerosis in 1999. That's 5 years of absolutely bewilderment, of not knowing, of thinking that I was gonna die, thinking that my life was over. My prognosis was very bleak and grim, and I didn't have anyone to show me to cope. Like I told you, no books, nothing that I could pull out and to try to figure out why was all of a sudden my face twitching? Why am I feeling that I'm having bladder dysfunction? Why am I having pain and inflammation in my joints at the age of 9 years old? Is super, sometimes I just can't believe that I'm that strong. And I don't want to toot my own horn, but I'm tooting, and I'm tooting for you too. Okay? So, in that instance, 5 things, because there's a kabajillion ways that I have learned how to cope, but I want to give you top five. Number 1, when I first was sent to the hospital, I missed my 9th grade dance, and I didn't get to graduate, so that was traumatic all in itself. In a little person's mind, not being able to graduate and get your first real accolade hurts, okay? And I didn't cope the best way ever, but I tried my best and just trying to get back to the life that I knew before I went to the hospital, because I wasn't diagnosed yet. So I just wanted to be that child that I was before the tumbleweed started growing. It wasn't happening. I couldn't dance anymore. I was a 7-year senior. I was at my dance academy. I couldn't go back to dancing. I had to hang up my ballet slippers, my tap shoes, and that life for me was done. I had to grow up really fast at the risk of losing the person that I knew before then. But there was nothing that I internally or externally can do to help find that person again, that child again. because MS already had taken over. So that whole summer I spent in the hospital. I tried to get out. I tried to escape, but with no success. At the end, right before I started my new high school, for middle school, I was able to enjoy, I guess, the first 3 weeks of, the last 3 weeks of August inside my home, in quarantine, not being able to be let out, and I couldn't walk anyway. So I had to cope and try to analyze and come to the understanding that these changes are going to probably last way longer than I thought, or in my head at that time, I was going to die. MS is not a death sentence, just all the medication that they pelt you on might just kill you. But we'll get to that later. Learning that there was no cure when I finally did get diagnosed was beyond, it still like flabbergasts me. But as I told you before, the first cases were documented in South Africa back in 1994. I remember that I saw that. 1994. And my onset was at 1999, and I don't foresee, or I can't foresee that they knew anything about childhood pediatrics at that time. So, my physician just continued me on a different steroids. If I didn't like that one, I would get another one and stuff like that. Really wasn't anything happening. Then when I took these other medications, I had to cope with all the symptoms that came along with them. So first with MS, I had to cope with walking, with spazzing, with the inflammation in my joints, my brain fog, my bowel dysfunction as a child. That's not cool, right? The lesions in my brain also brought on a lot of mobile impairment, cognitive impairment, balance, hearing, spasmodic, speech slurring, all that. And I could not do anything about it but take whatever I feel unconventional medications or therapies that the doctors were administering to me. I'm getting a leg cramp as we speak. Were administering to me. So, that was how I had to deal with it. And through that, I gained a lot of angst. And I was going through puberty at the same time. So it was just a lot. It was very, very cumbersome to go through all that by myself. And the only thing I really had was my mother and my grandmother kind of coaching me to the best of their abilities with more holistic things than just the doctor's appointments. My mom was so adamant about these doctor's appointments, boy. She still takes me to them now. But she's on that. But my grandmother was a holistic doctor. Then you have infections with these medications, and that doesn't go on well, and you're just dealing with the embarrassment and the uncertainty, and then you're in high school and you're trying to make friends, but you can't make friends because you're embarrassed to make friends and tell your friends all these things about you and getting to know you, and you can't hang out and you can't go to their house because your mom says no, and you have a curfew that's, God honestly, 6 hours earlier than everybody else's. So it was very cumbersome having to deal with it, to deal with P.O.MS at such a young age. It is said that only, what is it, about 5% are of children are diagnosed with relapse and remitting multiple sclerosis. And in that 5%, I'm pretty sure that Black people were not part of that. Don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure. Now, how I got through to where I am now was I always loved music and I always loved to write. I hated math. So I just utilized those as kind of mechanisms to where it would help me or entertain my mind and my focus. Everybody has, I just don't want people to turn to vices, to things like drinking and drugs to cope with multiple sclerosis or any other autoimmune disease, to use anything else to identify your pain and your discontent in your courses of treatment, which if you are on treatment, doing anything outside of your treatment would be counterproductive, except weed, because that helps a lot. But I feel like everyone has the potential to change their life from revolving around multiple sclerosis to multiple sclerosis revolving around you. When I got to my later years in life, high school was a whole bunch of you cannots. You cannot join the dance team. You cannot go to the dance. You cannot hang out with your friends. So I always had this big FOMO, feeling of missing out. And therefore, I would utilize that energy and translate it to things that I could do, which was writing and listening to music. And that's how, in time, I was able to figure out that I wanted to become a writer. So I hope that, all in all, you guys do find great ways to cope and deal with whatever issues that you're going through. I just named some of them because I just like to do 20-minute videos, but I use laughter. Laughter is the best medicine. Dancing, singing, reading, listening, going towards the ocean, vibing with people that bring the magic out of you. I am a huge advocate of nutrition. What happens in your gut happens in your mind. And I run almost every day, and I do yoga, and I travel a lot. These are things that help me keep my mind and depress the stress in my life. So guys, I will come to you again with more information. Please look out for me on Instagram. You guys can DM me any questions. My Tiny Spotted Mind. My name is Diana Leah. There's a little bit of kind of clarification on how I cope and what I do day in and day out, and what I have done for years. 23 years and counting, and this is my life dealing with pediatric onset multiple sclerosis. I hope you guys can join me again. If you guys have any questions, please reach out. My tiny spotted mind, DM me, and I'm here for it. Have a beautiful day, and God bless.